There are moments in politics when everything stops, when one question forces the country to reconsider what's actually at stake. And in this hearing, Elizabeth Warren didn't just ask that question. She dropped it directly at the feet of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, exposing a chilling reality: the U.S. military being deployed into American cities over the objections of elected leaders. And she has one word for it: un-American.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So President Trump has deployed the National Guard and then the U.S. Marines to Los Angeles over the objections of state and local officials, saying that the troops are needed to support immigration detention operations that are being carried out by ICE. On Sunday night, the president threatened to deploy ICE agents to other cities around the country that he sees as, quote, the core of the Democrat power center, end quote, specifically mentioning Chicago and New York. Secretary Hegseth, if the president wanted to deploy Marines to Chicago and New York City like he did in Los Angeles, would you carry out that order even if the local governors and mayors objected?
Well, Senator, because Governor Newsom was unwilling to address
that's not
protecting federal law enforcement agents in Los Angeles, President Trump had all the authorities, and the Defense Department happily supported defending our ICE agents in the conduct of their job. They have the right, as Americans, to be able to do their job without being attacked by mobs. And we will protect them in that process. And if other states needed it, we would provide that.
I know that you heard my question. So you would be willing to send troops if the president ordered it to Chicago and New York City? That's right.
Well, thankfully, New York City, unlike California, unlike Gavin Newsom, is willing to step up and address the issue with their local law enforcement.
I will take that as a yes. How about if the president says he wants to send troops to 15 cities? Would you be willing to do that?
Senator, I don't accept your hypothetical because it's
That's a hypothetical.
Not a real
That's
one.
the question. You're the Secretary of Defense. Would you send troops to 15 cities if the president said do it? Would you do it? 15 cities.
Again, Senator, it's a complete hypothetical lacking any context at all.
You're the Secretary
and I refuse
of
to
Defense.
box myself in based on questioning on a hypothetical.
But you're here asking for $1 trillion, and I want to know how you're going to spend it. And so my question is, if Donald Trump tells you to send troops to 15 American cities, are you going to spend the money and send the troops?
Thankfully, we're spending money on securing our southern border, a way the previous administration abandoned and allowed 21 million illegals to enter our country. So defending our homeland is a real serious priority under this administration, and we're doing it.
I understand the question about defense. Secretary Hegseth, about 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines have been sent to L.A. Is there a number of troops deployed to American cities over the objections of governors and mayors at which you would be concerned that we are undermining our national defense?
Senator, we've spent 2 decades guarding other people's borders. We think at the Defense Department it's about time we shore up ours.
So that's my question. Is there a number at which sending those troops to Los Angeles or Chicago or New York starts to undermine our ability to defend ourselves around the globe? Is there a number?
Senator, we look at capabilities and readiness around the globe all the time, and we're quite satisfied with our capabilities to defend the homeland, and we'll provide more if and when it's necessary.
So you are satisfied with our capabilities. Let me just ask, have you actually done the analysis and figured out how many troops you can deploy domestically before you start to undermine readiness around the world? Have you done that analysis?
Yes, ma'am.
Then would you let the rest of us in on it? We are the Senate Armed Services Committee, and you're here to ask for $1 trillion. What's the number?
We've got contingencies and plans for any number of capabilities should governors be unable, as Gavin Newsom has been, to actually secure his own federal agents in their cities.
How many troops can you deploy domestically before you start to cut into our readiness internationally?
As I said, previous administrations deployed our National Guard all around the globe in numbers far beyond what we were capable of supporting. So limited contingencies inside the United States to protect federal law enforcement is doable.
If the Supreme Court orders you to remove troops from American city streets, will you do so?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. If the Supreme Court orders you to remove troops from American cities, will you do so?
As I've said, Senator, I don't believe district courts should determine national security policy, but if the Supreme Court rules on a topic, we will abide by that.
Okay. You know, during her press conference last week, Secretary Noem said, "We are staying here to liberate the city from its mayor and its governor, people who were elected by a majority of voters." Secretary Hegseth is saying he is ready to deploy more troops and won't tell us what the implications are for our national defense. This is un-American and it makes us unsafe. I wish our Republican colleagues would speak.
From the very start, Warren goes straight for the structural danger. If the president orders the military into American cities, even when local leaders reject it, will the Secretary of Defense obey? No hedging, no wiggle room. She asks it clean, sharp, and direct. And Hegseth answers just as clean. That's right. In that moment, the entire balance between federal authority and state sovereignty sits on the table. Because historically, domestic troop deployments require cooperation with governors, not open defiance of them. But Warren isn't finished. She pushes the logic to its natural extreme. What about 15 cities? What if the president says, do it? Would you send the troops? This is the kind of question that reveals the real philosophy sitting behind a political appointee. And instead of stating limits, instead of identifying constitutional safeguards, instead of acknowledging the immense dangers of militarizing domestic law enforcement, Hegseth dodges behind talking points. He pivots to immigration. He pivots to California. He pivots to border security. But what he doesn't do is answer the actual question. Where is the line? Warren forces him back into the box again and again, and every time he steps out of it, he steps closer to admitting there is no line. That under this vision of presidential power, the military could be deployed anywhere, at any time, to any city, for any political justification, and the Department of Defense would simply comply. And then Warren shifts the terrain again, this time into the realm of national security readiness. If you're sending thousands of troops into American cities, at what point does that undermine our ability to defend the country abroad? This is not a small question. The Pentagon plans troop allocation down to the decimal. If thousands of military personnel are tied up patrolling Los Angeles or Chicago, that means they aren't available for global contingencies. Warren asks, "Have you done the analysis?" He says yes. She follows, "Then tell us the number." And suddenly, he refuses, because transparency here would reveal the uncomfortable truth. Either they haven't done the analysis, or the numbers would be politically explosive. And then she delivers the final frame. Not political, not partisan, but constitutional. A Secretary of Defense says he would stay in a city to liberate it from its elected leaders. A president threatens to send troops to cities he views as political enemies. A cabinet official refuses to state any limit on domestic deployment. That is the moment Warren snaps the lens into focus and says, this isn't American, and it makes us unsafe. And no matter where you stand politically, this hearing forces the real questions Americans rarely confront. What should be the limit on federal troop deployment inside the U.S.? What stops a president from using the military as a political instrument? And how fragile is the boundary between national defense and domestic policing? Because if that boundary collapses, so does something fundamental to the American idea. At the end of this exchange, viewers are left with a chilling truth. The question isn't whether a president could attempt to deploy the military domestically, it's whether anyone in the chain of command would ever say no. And that's exactly why hearings like this matter. They reveal the lines of accountability, or the absence of them. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think there should be strict limits on how and when the military can be deployed inside U.S. cities? And who should have the power to enforce those limits? Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every one. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. More hearings, more analysis, and more moments like this where the stakes go far beyond the headlines.